Hello everybody, my name is Gabriel Peitral Borja, and today I'm going to talk about the Cold War. The Cold War was a long period of tension between the democracies of the Western world and the communist countries of the Eastern Europe. The West was led by the United States and Eastern Europe was led by the Soviet Union. These two countries became known as superpowers. Although the two superpowers never officially declared war on each other, they fought on directly in proxy wars, the arms race, and the space race. Among the most important events we have the Berlin blockade and airlift that was on June 26, 1948. During 11 months, the US and British airplanes supplied West Berlin. In the eyes of the world, this made US look like heroes and made Stalin look like a terrible leader. It was an embarrassing event for the Soviet Union. This eventually resulted into the Berlin Wall, one of the biggest symbols of the Cold War. We also have the Korean War in June 1960 that took around 3 years. It is a war between North and South Korea. The North was supported by the Soviet Union and the South by the United States. This is where the United States wins its first battle of containment against the Soviet Union. It was the perfect chance to fight communism backed by Soviets without starting a nuclear war. Another important event is the space race that started on October 4th, 1957. This is where the United States and Soviets had an intense rivalry about space and who can get the farthest first. Soviets started with the lead with Sputnik 1. However, when they kept competing, it actually brought them together and made the International Space Station. Another event is the U-2 incident, where the United States CIA had a plane that was trying to obtain information from the Soviets, and the Soviets noticed it and shut it down. This event is fundamental to the Cold War because it was one of the few times that the Soviets did direct physical damage to an American. Due to this event, tensions between the Soviet Union and the United States continued to increase. We also have the Bay of Pigs, the invasion on the Bay of Pigs in April 17, 1961. This is where the US tried to invade Cuba, but failed miserably. This embarrassed the United States. And another one is the Cuban Missile Crisis in October 1962. This was the closest to the United States and Soviets actually fighting. It includes a lot of nuclear warfare and so on. Okay, so to understand why is it called the Cold War, it's important to go back a few years into the past and remember how the Second World War ended. As we know, it ended with the bombing of Hiroshima and Nagasaki. And these bombings were made with massive destruction weapons, or nuclear bombs as we know them. So it's called the Cold War because basically both countries were afraid of these bombs. So to avoid the destruction they could bring, they attacked each other indirectly through other countries and wars. Okay, so another important terms that are important to understand are socialism and capitalism. So the main difference between these economic systems is how the government is involved. In capitalism there are free market conditions, and in socialism the government regulates the market so it's more even. To socialists, true freedom and equality depend on social control of the resources that can make a society grow. This idea was first established or proposed by Karl Marx and Friedrich Engels in the Manifesto of the Communist Party. The ideology of classical capitalism was expressed in an inquiry into the nature of causes of the wealth of nations by the Scottish economist and philosopher Adam Smith. So in this table we can see some of the most important differences between the economic systems. For example, in ownership, in capitalism, assets are owned by private firms. In socialism, assets are owned by the government. For example, for the equality, the income is determined by the market forces, and in socialism, there is a redistribution of income. In capitalism, prices are determined by supply and demand, and in socialism, there is a price control, and so on. Okay, so to finish up, I would like to talk about my opinion of the topic. And well, as we know, the Cold War was an ideological war mainly, but not entirely, because like the United States and the Soviet Union took both actions and measures that are quite violent and not that humanitarian, and that caused a lot of lives. People were afraid of the threat that they were receiving, that maybe one day an atomic bomb would fall over their heads just like that. And that's it. I think it was a really sad period of time in which people were really afraid of what would happen to them, and the world powers were only concerned about having more power. And that's it.